Hello. Welcome. Welcome to China Institute's program, The Slow Track Through China, 曼妙徒步中国 with Pulitzer-winning journalist Paul Salopek and an amazing group of special guests. My name is Shenzhan Liao, Senior Vice President of China Institute. I'm honored to host tonight's program. Just to start with the overview of tonight's program, we will start with a brief introduction, and Mr. Paul Salopek and his working partner from China, Marina Zhang, will first speak, and followed by a dialogue with Jiayang Fan, our moderator, and Dave Pond, Executive Director from Out of Eden Walk. And then we will follow by a Q&A with the audience. As a reminder, please put your question in the Q&A session. We will be able to monitor the questions as the program continues. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Paul Salopek, Executive Director of the Out of Eden Walk, a Pulitzer-winning writer and a National Geographic Explorer. A journalist with a long career, having reported globally for National Geographic magazine, the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, the New Yorker. The list can go on and on. An educator who taught international reporting at Princeton University, and his wide career range also includes commercial fisherman, gold miner, and cattle rancher. Currently, Mr. Salopek is now walking through China as part of his ambitious 24,000-mile Out of Eden Walk journey. Just to provide a bit more context, Mr. Salopek's multi-year journey started in 2013. Here is a map by National Geographic Society showing the starting of the journey out of Africa in Ethiopia and ending in Chile. But if the journey goes on as planned, it will be 2027. Mr. Salopek entered China through Yunnan province, southwest of China, in October 2021, and has been tracking since in China. Before we turn to Mr. Salopek, I would like to share an 8-minute video made by Out of Eden Walk to give a feel of the places and people on this part of the journey.
People sometimes ask me why I'm doing this. Why am I walking across the world for year after year, for thousands of miles across continents? Some of them think I'm insane. But what I remind them is that we've been doing this since day one. We've been learning and interacting with reality at about 3 miles an hour, the pace of a human walk, in that what I'm doing is very normal. And it feels good. It's the modern world's habit of sitting down that's kind of crazy.
发放案款的基本情况，向9件案件的11位申请人集中发放执行案款30点。
The walk has always been a doorway to the unknown or the formerly known world, especially now after walking through 18 countries as I set out across 6,000 kilometers or 3,600 miles through the Middle Kingdom, when China is relatively closed for both geopolitical and pandemic reasons. In this way, the walk has become a rare, maybe even historic opportunity to explore the hinterlands of this vast, diverse, and complicated country, and not only as a pathway to new discovery, but as a bridge to mutual understanding. One of the great gifts of the walk is this opportunity it has offered to slow down my life and my thinking and my feeling, my writing over the past 9 years. It's this opportunity to move in the opposite direction of an ever faster spinning world. By taking in life at the human pace of my own footsteps, I'm rediscovering my home, my planet, close up, in meaningful detail, through my body's own speed and rhythms. And it feels deeply good.
也下得去的哈，这里。好，我们就从这里下去。谢谢，谢谢，谢谢您。
The ability to be patient, to listen, to be attentive, to be alert, to be empathetic. I think we're losing these connections through our obsession with speed. We've become lonely with our machines. It's not a solo journey. In fact, I can't imagine doing it alone. People share everything they have with me. Food, water, stories. When you're on foot, your quest is one of belonging. And usually it's rewarded.
一级做完了吗？没有吧？还要走7年。还有做，现在做了10个国家，18个一级做了吗？应该没有。做了。
Every single day of my walk, my real destination is people. The growing community that surrounds the walk, that gets involved in the walk, is my growing family of walking partners. Their stories deepen and enrich this journey immeasurably. They're extraordinary human beings who become my teachers, whether they're camel shepherds in Ethiopia or geophysicists in Kazakhstan. They add their voices to the walk, and in this way, the walk becomes like a song. It changes from a solo to a medley. Whether we like it or not, we're all walking together into a bottlenecked new century. With the climate crisis upon us, and with gigantic gaps in income, with rising tribalism across ideologies, we face a pretty difficult path ahead, a panorama of uncertainty. The walk teaches me this, that we stand a better chance of survival by walking together, by learning from each other, by listening to each other's ideas, and by pulling each other up as we move forward. There is a very old joy in this approach. Every new day on my trail, whether I wake up in a Buddhist temple or the hut of a Sichuan yak herder, the word that floats to mind always as I lace up my boots for another day is the same: It's yes.
Now, let's welcome Paul Salopek, turning from China. Together with Marina Zhang, one of Mr. Salopek's working partners in China, streaming in from Toronto. Paul and Marina, could you please turn on your camera? Welcome. Now, Paul and Marina, the screen is yours.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjang. Yeah, and I apologize for those of you if the video was a bit stuttery. It was on my end. We can happily, point you to the Vimeo page where you can watch it when it's synced up. Zoom sometimes does this. But yes, I'm Paul Salopek. It's a great pleasure, an honor to be here, to be talking to you. And I'm talking to you from about 120 kilometers north of Xi'an in Shanxi province. And I've been walking through China since last October. So going on kind of like, what is it, a year and a bit. And the Out of Eden Walk project is a storytelling project. It's a project that intends to get off the merry-go-round of 24/7 news cycles to kind of slow down the information gathering process to the pace of a human walk, which the premise of the project is both scientific and literary. The scientific part is that I am walking out of Africa along the corridors of dispersal that all of our ancestors traveled way back in the Pleistocene, in the Stone Age, when every one of us on this call is African, if you go far back enough in your family tree, if you believe genetics. And I've decided to go from taking planes, trains, and automobiles as a foreign correspondent to using my body, my feet, as the main instrument of gathering information in a very fast age. Instead of walking or zooming rather with everybody else forward in the information revolution, I decided to pivot 180 and kind of move in the direction of going slow. There's this whole idea of slow journalism, slow storytelling, right? That's kind of in parallel to the slow food movement. To use the walk and this chunk of my life as a laboratory for storytelling in this age. And the idea is to, by moving more slowly through communities, through individual lives that make up the headlines of our day, whether it's climate change or war or politics or economics, to steep myself and the process in more immersively and hopefully extract more meaning from stories, right? So this has been going on for almost 10 years. We're coming up on our 10th anniversary of being on the trail. It's a continuous journey. I've not flown back to the US since late 2012 when I went to Africa to begin this project. The idea is to get into the mindset of the original walkers and original storytellers, because in every culture, as you all know, there's this tradition of walking and telling stories. There are traveling opera troupes who moved through this part of China 100 years ago from village to village, giving performances, telling stories. There are Khala in the Islamic world, travelers, pilgrims who move from sacred site to sacred site. There are, the Greek bards in Europe who would walk from village to village playing a lyre and singing, epic poetry. The griots of Africa, West Africa, doing the same. This tradition of melding walking with storytelling is ancient. And I thought, why not do an experiment? We try to apply this methodology to the 21st century. So that's what I'm doing. And it's been amazing to be walking through China. That's kind of the macro picture. I'm going to kind of wrap up my talk because we'll have more back and forth later in the segment with Jiayang, and also there'll be a question and answer period. But one of the crucial elements, what I get asked a lot is, isn't it lonely? Are you walking alone? The answer is no. Walking alone would be antithetical to this project. The whole idea is to walk with people who know their home landscape. And that's been one of the great gifts of the walk for me. And I hope for our readers around the world is that we get to kind of see the world through the eyes of the people who inhabit these landscapes, whether they're scholars living in a big city, whether they're other media people, whether they're pastoral nomads, farmers, you name it. I've walked with dozens and dozens and dozens of people coming out of Africa into the Middle East and then through Anatolia into Central Asia, across the Western Himalayas, coming down through Pakistan, across northern India, into Myanmar, and now in China. The great joy of waking up every day somewhere along the path of the ancestors and to be hand in hand with a colleague who knows this landscape is like a continuing education course, like advanced degree work that goes on day after day, year after year, and yet the subject matter changes every single day, as Zhang Hongyi will be able to tell you coming up next. So in China alone, I've walked with 17 different walking partners, and they've ranged from book editors to documentary photographers, to alpine climbing guides, to cross-cultural educators. It's been fantastic. So my China is, and my readers' China is actually through the lens of my walking partners. They are my China. So with no further ado, I'll let Hongyi talk a little bit about her experience after walking through her home province of Yunnan.
Hey, Paul.
Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thanks for everyone. I hope if you have time, you can go into the All of Eating Walks website, because it's very good multimedia assets. It has connected all kind of stories when Paul he started walking from Ethiopia to the Saudi Arabia, India, and Myanmar, and then now in China it's already 28 pages of the stories. They all very fascinating, and yeah, I'm more get used to Paul to call me Marina, and we've been working in Yunnan for 3 months. It's very, very memorable, beautiful walking experience for me. And yeah, although I'm a Yunnanese person, but actually I live Yunnan when I was 19 years old. I fly to the northern city in China to enter into my university, and then I choose to study abroad in Canada. And I never have trying to travel to Yunnan, but I love walking. Even when I'm living in the city, I will give up the bus to choose to walking on the bus road, return back to my home about 8 km. So when I'm walking with Paul, with climbing mountain, connected mountain, with walking pass by village, because Yunnan is a multi-ethnic group, people community. And the geographic feature is very complex too, but I feel so comfortable. It feels like that feeling is like you're totally opening your body. You're being a part of the nature. It feels like a drop of the water integrate into the sea. So when I'm gradually walking, I feel like more energy I can observe from the nature. But today I want to mainly talk about how Paul and I weave collecting the story along our way, because I feel like walking is just our vehicle, our tour, but our destination is people. So I feel like why we need to go into this very slowly way, not taking any the modern car or the elfin this tour to arrive in a place to meet these people, because I think walking it contains the very fabulous magic energy that other modern vehicle cannot compare with. It can create a connection, a really strong emotion connection between us with the local landscape and with the local people. Yeah, and I want to share the screen to talk about the story. Okay, so this is the first story Paul he teaches me to do when we've already walking 3 days from the very famous tourist city Dali, going to the northern side, and we arrive in the Guanyin village. And he just locked himself in a hotel room to writing from the early morning until the very deep night, because there is a deadline going on his head. And I'm just using my camera to walking around the village every day, along the lake, going to the mountain, going to the open street market, and I'm just taking photo for every people, for the color that I like, for the light looks beautiful. And one day when we have the dinner, when Paul looks at this photography, he said, he stared at me and very sincerely said, Marina, you need to make a story. Tomorrow, go to talk with this granny and ask some question to them, such as what is the happiest and the most painful moment of your life. I feel the question is really strange, because we never ask such the deep question to local people. We always ask, do you have your breakfast? Do you have your lunch? Similar, like very simple question, but yeah, the next time I'm to do the thing. And these grannies, they just sitting in front of the local village grocery hall during the early morning. Every time they are greeting to the passing people, and I'm just entered to trying to talking with them. It's totally opening a new world to me. It feels like they are just waiting for someone to listening to them. And this group of granny, they are a talent storytelling. They have a very clear memory about their whole life, what they have experienced during their childhood, and the heavy farming workload they have to do during their teenage time. And some of them, why they have to immigrate from their parents' village, about 600 km, arrive in this village and living in for 50 years. So I feel like I feel like they totally opening their mind to me. So walking helps me to create a bridge, helps me to touch their mind and touch their memory, touch their emotion. And then I just choose 2 of them to make a 3 days deep conversation. So one of them is called Li Huaiying on the left side, who seems like is addicted to her memory. And the second person is Li Xiangzhen, the granny who's sleeping in a very peaceful phase. 2 of them is already 80 years old, and they all married to this village from the outside village. And when I'm talking with them, I'm shocked with their memory. They have the same memory about a Chinese horrible history on the 1958 until the 1960s. It's natural starvation, and every Chinese family has suffering on it. So Li Xiangzhen, she just told me during that time, I was 19 years old, and our whole family, we only have a plum of beans for a meal for a day. I'm extremely starvation. In order to have a full stomach, I have to marry to my husband, a person who is really take care of me, but my parents cannot accept him because he is too old. And yeah, but the most inspiring story part that they told to me, which touching to me, is about their relationships with their husband. Because when we talking about their psychology status on their the end phase of their life, Li Huaying just said, I think the whole life of mine is a failure. I feel my heart is already broken because 40 years ago, my husband chose another woman. He abandoned me and another 3 children. I'm working so tough. I'm painful almost to a crazy status, but I'm thinking about my 3 children. So I did all kinds of labor work. I'm climbing to the mountain to collect the woods and to selling the herbs in the market. I'm working for 12 hours a day in order to save, earning money to keep my 3 children. And now Li Huaying, she is living with her little daughter in a very big house, but she's still usually addicted to very painful memory. And then when we return back to the Li Xiangzhen, like I have talked before, she got married because she wanted to eat enough food on 1958. That is a very tough time for Chinese person. But when she married in this Guanyin village, her husband is a primary school teacher and a very respected person in local place, and he take care of her in a really kindly way. He is really respect to her, and that person has a many handwritten book. It's a very knowledgeable person, but he passed away 12 years ago. And Li Xiangzhen now, his living conditions is some degree is poorly compared with Li Huaying. But Li Xiangzhen, he feels so satisfied with her life. She just said, my husband respected to me. When I finished that information collection, I feel like a rock is hitting my heart. I cannot believe that it's totally different feeling when when people directly talking the things to you, or compare with when you reading this information from a book. Then you will know there still have the majority female person in China in the rural areas. They've still staying a very, from my perspective, in a very poorly status. And Paul and me, we just spend a few days to talk about the theme of the story. That this story is about when the lost love will affect the female's fate, or is about because of we still living in a patriarchal society. So if the patriarchal society still existed, the thing will repeatedly existed in everywhere, China, Iran, and India. On last Saturday, I'm participating in a procession in the downtown of Toronto. It's about 200 Iran people who live in Canada gathered in the city town of Toronto. They are fighting for freedom of the women. But at that moment, my memory has fly back to the Guanyin village. I feel like the lost love story of these 2 grannies, the core value is as same as what is happening in Iran. And I just want to illustrate walking and listening can really helps me to building the connection with the local people. And it's like a weaving tour. It's not only to mix the longitude or the altitude geographically, but most importantly is walking can help us connected with the time span. And you will have inner self to think about yourself. And then when we finish the 2 weeks staying in Guanyin village, Paul and me, we continue our walking. And we just use a similar method to talking with all kinds of people, such as Na Xi shaman, who has sophisticated astronomical knowledge about the sky and the star, and a bi-ethnic folk singer, Li Genfan, who can sing all kinds of bi-ethnic groups' music, which is combined with their normally farming work. And we also met old hunter, because 40 years ago, hunting in China is legal behavior, and he is very proud to the time.
I'm seeing messages about the time. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So the last thing I want to know for last thing is, when I finished working with Paul, I think he already planted a seed in my mind. And when I'm returned back to that village, the local people opening a broad gate for me. They invited me to participate in their religious ceremony and participate in their picnic. And I'm also teach the local person to use a camera to take the photo. Yeah. I think it's a very sweet, invisible ethos. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Marina. It's indeed truly moving stories. And I just want to comment, well, Paul, thanks for initiating this project. We're walking through the global surface and get to the stories. And Marina, when you said those grannies are just waiting for being heard, to share their stories, to be asked those questions, I just cannot wait to hear more of your stories. And especially in the next segment of the program, I want to now invite Dave Pound, board chair of the Out of Eden Walk. Dave, could you please turn on your camera? And while I know Marina perhaps is taking some time to stop sharing the image, so we can all get the images of everybody on the screen. Thank you, Marina. Hi, Dave. And
hi, Shenzhen.
Hi, welcome to join the group. And also I want to invite Jiayang Fan, staff writer from the New Yorker, a dear friend of China Institute, and the moderator of this next dialogue with Paul, Marina, and Dave, who's the key person behind the scene, but while making it possible that Paul can walk on the globe. And also, Jiayang, congratulations on your first book to be published, and now it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the intro, and I would just love to kind of dive right in with a question about this remarkable walk. A walk of this scale taking so many years, I mean, encompassing over 12,000 miles is something that, so many of us can't even fully imagine. And I am always, curious about how time, kind of the concept of time in our overstuffed modern lives, how it kind of always feels like we never have enough time. And, if you are to believe Einstein's theory of relativity, I mean, time is all relative. So to travel on foot, Paul, for such a long stretch of time is something that many of us can't even imagine. And I wonder if the concept of time has changed for you kind of over the course of the last 10 years. I mean, has just this 12,000 mile journey on foot shifted your conception of time? Has it slowed down, or has it sped up, or is time something you are just not even really thinking about, as most of us are kind of with our iPhones at all times?
Yeah, Jay, again, congratulations also mine for your book. That's great.
Oh,
That's
thank
great news. Yeah. And shout out to my long-suffering editor, Kate. You might be watching. The next segment is coming, I promise. So yes, time is fluid. Einstein was apparently right. You can apply the lessons of relativity to bipedalism, to walking. We were just talking a little bit earlier how walking. Well, let me step back. Speed, which I am not against, by the way. I'm not an anti-speed fanatic. I used to ride motorcycles. I like speed. I like fast things. But when you get off of fast things, kind of a daily miracle happens. You wake up to the world under a tree, in a farmer's house, in a hotel, in a downtown of a megapolis, it doesn't matter. And you begin to walk. And every day, depending on the human geography of that day's walk, you are walking through time, through a different time. You're walking through a different velocity of time. And I found that what walking does, when I was a kid, we used to take walks on weekends or go hiking or backpacking. But when you walk continuously from horizon to horizon, walk continentally, if you will, you sort of enter what another writer has called sacramental time, where you slow down enough to be truly switched on and awake, so that the seconds and the hours elongate. Simply because it's no big epiphany that walking is associated with spirituality, with philosophy. You enter kind of this state of mind of both hyper alertness, like what I liken to the alertness of a hunter, i.e., our hunter-gathering ancestors who've been walking for 300,000 years. And this, Jiayang, I think, is the natural pace, 5 kilometers an hour, 3 miles an hour, at which our brains are adapted to absorb stimuli. It's how we are adapted evolutionarily to absorb information. So that's why walking sort of feels nice, right? It feels good to go out for a walk. If you're stressed, if you're in trouble, if you go out, what do? You go out for a walk, preferably with a friend that you can talk to, or a solitary walk to think. So thinkers, philosophers, poets, writers, creatives, walking is it's normal to go into this walking space. And walking time is, we were just talking about Xi'an, is you in an average day, you can walk through centuries. You can walk through the hurly-burly, this helioscope of smeared color of what a modern downtown in a Chinese city is, which is hallucinogenic. And in a few hours, walk into suburbs where you're in the 90s or early 2000s in China, and then walk for a few more hours, and you're suddenly in this transition zone into rural communities where the houses are made of rammed earth, where people are moving around on foot, often older people, right? There aren't too many young people left. But time itself becomes elastic. And so in the course of a single day, you can walk through enormous spans of time, and walking somehow liberates something in the neurons to allow you to apprehend that. And I've written about this, the elasticity of time and what time does to the process of writing. Yeah.
Right. No, I love the elasticity of time, but I also wonder if it feels asymmetrical in the sense that you are voluntarily undertaking this journey, and as you've mentioned, passing by people who haven't. I think you've I've read elsewhere, kind of in response to a question about walking, kind of you feel like they're villagers who've never really left their the few kilometers that define their home, and you very generously say that you feel like they are no less wise than someone who has walked the globe. But I want to press on that a little bit more, because of course you are this very worldly cosmopolitan writer who is able to travel through time and also travel through space and kind of the evolution of civilization. And I wonder about the asymmetry of that, because every place that you pass, chances are you've seen so much of the world than the people who are living in these villages. Of course, it doesn't mean that they're any less, wise, but there is information asymmetry, I would imagine. How does that inform these encounters?
Well, this is a really crucial point, and it's a good point to be aware of. I'm talking about not just the privilege of my gender and my ethnicity and my passport and the fact that I have money. There's this entitlement also of worldliness, maybe of time, if you will. I've traveled through many epochs, and people who might live 120 kilometers north of Xi'an have not left their lifespan. But what I've discovered, and I'm not romanticizing this, I grew up in semi-rural Mexico. I spent a lot of time in the mountains of northwestern Mexico working on cattle ranches. And the people who taught me about writing are the people in these communities who never left their valley. I'm thinking of one, my surrogate grandfather in Chihuahua, to be specific, who was as wise. And I would go, I'd take leaves from the Iraq War or from war to go spend time to recover in his ranch and work. He was as wise and as worldly in some ways, in many important ways, as I was with information. It's just that his information was concentrated within a geographical space that went deep, right? Because I made, up until that point as a foreign correspondent, I was zipping between conflicts on aircraft, and I would parachute into a space, and I was good at it, gather as much information as I can, filter it, present it, but it was cellophane thin, right? I'm sorry, that's just the nature of our job. Anybody who claims otherwise, I'm skeptical of. But for people who stay in place, they may not know, what movie's playing on the internet, what's popular, meme, et cetera, TikTok, although that's changing too, even the most remote, as you know. But they have this connection with a space where time is, I don't know how to, is vertical. It's like a core sample of time where they have as much to teach me and have a worldliness and a sophistication about them that I don't have, right? We can swap our different kind of hues of sophistication, but I'm not saying this to kind of be, romantic about rural life, which is extremely hard, believe me. I know what being locked in a stifling village community is, where everybody knows you and your secrets. And I've had women kind of run after me when I walk through a village, pouring their hearts out about the frustrations of their life because they can't share it with anybody else in their community. And I can safely take their secrets away because I'm just a nomad walking through. It's heartbreaking. But at the same time, this project is a connection of beads on a string of people who know their own little space really, really well, one after the other. And maybe that's why it's so interesting. That's why readers ask me, don't you get bored? Isn't, the same stories? I'm saying, I'm sorry, there are no 2 days with no two people, as you know, as a fellow journalist, that tell the same story. It might overlap 90%, right? I'm heartbroken. Why don't people love me more? Why am I loved more? Why isn't the person that I love me back? I hate the boss. The climate's changing. These kind of recur again and again, but it's that particularity to space, the life spent in space that is unique, right?
No,
yeah.
No,
so time plays into all of that, I think. Yeah.
I think that's so well put. And there's something about you being able to kind of walk and also be so humble, I think, in your in your approach to this trek. I wonder if it inspires, because this is something that I obsess about, kind of just whether we as a species are making progress, and whether from our ancestors walking out of Africa to now. I live in New York City. I'm saturated information. Oftentimes it's tragic information. I can't help sometimes feel like, has there been progress made? And I feel like I lose perspective. And for someone who I think has so much more perspective just by virtue of kind of walking through time, do you have sort of thoughts on whether there has been progress from when our ancestors walked out of Africa, such a long time ago? I know that's a very small, trivial question, but if you had a few kind of sentences on it, I would love to hear.
That's a recurring theme in my work, and it is humbling. It's not that I'm humble; it's that what I'm doing is humbling. It would humble you. It would humble almost all of us. It is when you come to realize that most human beings on the planet are good, and that living in a media saturated environment in an increasingly accelerating information revolution, paradoxically, may not be the most informed way to live. So you know what I'm saying. So
of course,
Maureen is an example of that. I would not be sitting here talking to you. I may not even be alive. I'm not trying to over dramatize this if it weren't for the goodness of people. Because my walking partners become family. The people that I meet take care of me when there is nothing in it for them. There's nothing in it for them to help me. That's the daily miracle of the walk. So there is this daily affirmation. And, again, if people are interested, that was sort of the theme of that video. If you go back, it's on our Vimeo webpage. If you watch it, when it's actually a video, that is, I wake up every day and the word is yes, yes. I'll keep doing this. I'll go the next kilometer. I'll go the next day. I reserve the right to stop it when it's no. So I'm not kind of goal oriented to reach Tierra del Fuego. I mean, that's the aspiration, but so far it's been yes. And I do have hope because we sort of forget in the information age, which bombards us with negativity, because negativity sells. If it bleeds, it leads. And I come from that ecosystem, right? I was a war correspondent. If I didn't have hope that we were making some progress, I wouldn't even be doing this. What would be the point of doing this? What would I be trying to prove? I can tell you that I probably couldn't do this walk 80 years ago. I probably couldn't do it 500 years ago. I probably certainly couldn't do it 1,000 years ago, because I would have been shanghaied or waylaid or whatever colorful phrase you want to use for being whacked somewhere along the way. And people who had killed me would be whistling happily as they're stripping my body, right? I walk through languages, cultures, time zones, mountains, rivers, cities, ideologies, and I'm here telling you one of the things that is like sort of it's an oversimplification, but it's a fact, is one of the realizations of walking through the world in the pathways of the ancestors is not how hard it is, Jiayang, how easy it is.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully put. I mean, to move on to a more a lighter subject than human progress. Before we started, before the program officially started, we were chatting about food, and of course, I think about again our ancestors, kind of how their migration was so likely affected by the search for food, right? So much of human history is survival and just kind of filling our stomachs. And I was telling you how, as an immigrant, I moved to the States when I was 8. And, decades later, I still can't really go for more than a week without East Asian food, which means that if I'm traveling to any other parts of the world, I have to pack plenty of pickled vegetables and ramen and hot sauce. Oh my God, hot sauce in my luggage. And that's a real privilege. Of course, I don't know if you have hot sauce or kind of condiments in your luggage, but I'm genuinely curious how you have adapted, how gastrically you have been adapting on this journey, because even if my feet could do it, I'm not sure my stomach could. And I guess I'm just kind of asking about your experience, and if you have advice for any of us who would ever want to endeavor on this, whether you think that we, humans can really adapt to
food is, I mean, what's more fundamental to making a human connection with a stranger than sitting down and having a chop, or over, even better yet, over a bowl of rice noodles, right? Yunanese. So food is a powerful, one of the most powerful, I'd say, connectors among us, right? And that's also been a source of great energy and kind of optimism and hope for me is that, you can sit down with almost anybody, years ago, I had some rough scrapes and I was in prisons and you sit down, if you can get a guard to share a child with you, you've made an important connection. And I think the advantage that I have is probably an advantage that I would not wish on anybody, yourself included, is I have like the culinary sophistication of a goat. I can pretty much eat anything and be happy. I can eat not just the contents of in the box, but eat the cardboard and be okay. So it's like a lack of, my palate is not sophisticated, but at the same time, as a writer, I use food as an incredible source of joy and humanity and just it's almost euphoric when you're in a tough situation, the comfort of food, right? Whether you travel with, hot sauce, when you go on your travels, I have to limit what I carry. So I have to live off the land, right? I live off whatever people are feeding me.
Mhm.
But that's a great way to inform yourself as a journalist about what's going on in people's lives. Walking through Yunnan, if you had to ask me what's your favorite Yunnanese food, I'll say it was the ingredients that go into Yunnanese food, because I was walking through Yunnan during the autumn harvest. Can you imagine Yunnan and all the fruit, all the vegetables coming straight out of somebody's backyard onto the table, literally washing the soil off, the leeks, the onions, the tomatoes, or kind of brushing the apple on your sleeve, was this kind of, Steinbeckian relationship with food that was just wow. It made my palate, even my goat's palate was like, braying at the sky. So yeah, food is fantastic. Food is as much as we're passed from hand to hand, as I'm being passed hand to hand across continents by people's goodness. I'm being, another way to look at it is sitting at a really long table that's 24,000 miles long, and the courses are changing constantly, as are the people sitting next to you. And one day it'll be a construction worker from Turkey taking off his helmet, and you'll have some kebab, and then he gets up and leaves, and the next person sitting down to you is a Yunnanese farmer who's saying, here is my smoked pork, go at it, right? And we talk. So it's like an ongoing meal, a 24,000 mile long meal.
Yeah, I do. I wonder if at some point, also just kind of the human need for food kind of forces you to adapt. Like there's some flavors that just I do not like, and I do wonder, but I've never been for an extended period of time, have not had access to like hot sauce or kind of like the things that I desire versus what I need. But I guess have you ever been tempted to like care package of whether it's hot sauce or like a block of cheese or or do you feel like hunger always takes precedence?
Yeah, I'm not wedded. So in Xi'an, I was telling you that the Taco Talk shop was sadly closed by COVID.
I really feel for you. I really feel for you.
But in Chengdu, scored a taco, right? And that was wonderful, right? So yeah, of course it's wonderful. But my strategy, I guess, forced on me by force, is I find flavors that I like in the cuisines that I'm walking through. So then I'll say, as you do when you travel, say, I tried this yesterday, can I have some more of that, right? Whatever it is, right?
Right. No, for me, it was like the discovery of the black pepper in American cuisine. I don't have hot sauce, but I can always drown everything I'm eating in black pepper.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Jiayang and Paul. Now I'm hungry, but Shenzhen, I think you had a couple of questions that have popped up.
Oh, yes, this is a question. We can't hear Shenzhen, but I can post it. Oh.
Yeah. I just love the conversation that were from the big questions about humanities, to street food and the Sichuan peppercorns. We do have a couple of questions from Q&A. I think first of all, I want to turn to Dave. Since we have you here, what is behind the scene like for out of Eden walk and Paul trekking in China, and what's the biggest challenge?
Well, you might think that a epic trek like Paul's would involve a large, complex organization, but it is very much a boutique operation. We have a wonderful executive director, Julia Payne, who is on the call, and she is our 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week problem solver. And then I chair the nonprofit board, and our job is to ensure Paul has what he needs so that he can be free to walk and to observe and to write. And that's anything from logistics to funding. And I would say our biggest challenge is back to that sense of time. When the walk began in 2013, the original plan was for a 7-year walk, 21,000 miles. Well, just as our ancestors ran into real life situations that delayed their migration, this walk is now going to be a 15-year event, maybe, over twice the time. And so trying to plan for that and to plan for events that impact the walk wherever Paul is in the world is incredibly difficult because we don't know what we're going to encounter. We've had to move around entire regions of the world because of real life events going on. And that continually remains our biggest challenge. Of course, with COVID in China, that has been a challenge. It's been a day-to-day challenge for Paul, but it's been a challenge for us supporting Paul as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. We have another question about climate change from an audience, Michael McCormick. So I think I just want to distill the question a little bit because, well, Paul, you mentioned information gap and about climate change. There's so much about this information age politics of it. And there are terms like greenhouse gas emissions and everything. And when you encounter the people from your walk and a years-long walk, do they do they also describe climate change phenomena, like, well, what is going on, an increase of droughts or hurricanes and fire without knowing about greenhouse gas emissions and the information politics of it? Could you talk about that?
It's a good question. Yeah, in Zhejiang, and it is whether there is action being taken to remedy it. It is now common knowledge almost everywhere that I've been, even in the remotest corner of northeastern Afghanistan, in the Wakhan corridor, in communities and pastoral communities that have no road connection and no internet connection to the outer world. They know. They're not only aware of the global conversation about climate change, and they're living it. So everybody's talking about climate, the changing climate, and about, I don't know, 70% of the walk has been through rural areas, and who better knows the nuances of changing weather than farmers, right? So they talk about it constantly. It's almost like one of those dolls that you have that used to be in the old days, where you had the string that you pulled out and the doll would talk. It's almost a go-to conversation about a difficulty of getting by today, whether it's melting glaciers, where that's affecting water supplies, whether it's climate changes in the river plains of India that are radically affecting the well-being of the hundreds of millions of people that live along those rivers. It's everywhere. The conversation is truly global. Yeah.
And I keep thinking as well, you are walking through so many places and through time. This is a years of project. When you're speaking about everywhere, and like you're really truly speaking from the ground. We are, sorry.
Grassroots.
Yeah. Indeed. I have one last question for Marina. As well, you shared your stories while walking with Paul, and you mentioned that this walk also gave you some new perspectives for looking at the locals, asking questions you have never thought about. I just wonder, as well, you are a local native of Yunnan province. When you are on this, when you slow down, and what kind of new perspectives that will you have gained when you are in this project compared to like when you were growing up in Yunnan?
The first thing is I have to admit, growing up in Yunnan gives me some nature advantages compared with other person who's living in the metropolitan city. Especially my homie is living in an agriculture university. Though I think I was a children time, my parents, they don't have the time to educate it to me. So the whole my time is spent climbing the tree, enter into the very big fish ponds to catch the fish, and I'm running through the around the fields until I was 11 years old. My parents have forced me to enter into the city to living, and I'm pretended I am a city person for 6 years on my on my junior high school and high school, and but I feel like my root is a nature person who already got used to living in the nature condition. So that is a very good basement when I working with Paul, when we really enter into that village, that I can build the relationship with the local farmers in a really short way. Yeah, and because although I really like walking, but sometimes I don't have enough life experience to explore other people's life, because I feel like I already spent all of my energy to dealing with my thing, and I love travel, and I like something really looks beautiful, the ancient historical site, and to enjoy the very good food. But when I'm working with Paul one day, when we are in a restaurant, he just sitting down and very seriously to talking to me. Marina, even you have traveling to many countries, so what? You need to consider about what you really want to do in your life. You need to consider about this question. And then I was considering about the question for a long time. Yeah, he teaches me a lot, because every day I don't have experience even to read people's emotion, or even when we enter into a place there have too many people, I don't know how to dealing with it. But Paul, he knows, even he don't know the Yunnanese language, the local language, but he can build in the relationship very quickly. So I'm just learning from him. And his brain is like a museum. That museum has deserved all countries' experience.
Indeed, so, well, we can see that was through your camera, and a good guidance, and also the real experience on the ground through your camera. And I would invite the audience really go to Out of Eden, the website. There are many stories, many of Marina's photos, and you can see the project across time and space. We are unfortunately out of time now. I just want to, there's one, we touched upon many topics, but one thing Paul mentioned, when you wake up every day, it's yes. It really is the goodness of people that you're encountering. I just feel this gave me so much hope. And I also want to conclude the program on a hopeful note. Thanks to the audience to tune in today. Thanks to Paul, Marina, Dave, and Jiayang for moderating this program. Please, stay safe, stay connected, and we will see you next time at China Institute's program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shenzhen.
Yes.